Let's do it.
All right, so what are we making here?
So we're going to start with our crust, and then I'll have you start with this. You, I think, have made something similar multiple times, so that's why I picked it.
All right,
I got
great.
to have lunch with you and your lovely wife, Hannah, and you guys mentioned that this was one of your favorite things. So yeah, so I created this more as a little bit of a, kind of like a combination of a lemon meringue pie. And the lemon curd. So I'm going to pulse these, and then actually, if you want to get started, we're going to dump almost everything. Let me just pull the things that we're not dumping. We're not dumping that. You can just start dumping all of this into our pan, and then we'll start it over low heat. So while you do that, I'm going to pulse this until it gets nicely finely ground. So I'm using just some grain-free cookies. You could use gluten-free graham crackers. You could use my homemade graham crackers. As long as they're crunchy cookie, that's kind of what we want.
All right.
And these are actually snickerdoodle tonight, not graham crackers. So I'm like smelling the cinnamon, and I think it's a really good combination with this.
Nice.
So we're going to put this at the bottom of jars and save a bit to sprinkle on the top, and then the pudding is kind of our main dessert there.
Got this nice honey here.
Yes.
Some creamy
it's my
honey.
favorite. Everybody that's followed me for a long time knows I have this 15-pound pail of that honey. It's from Canada. It's wild. Like, it's just so good.
And some
wildflower.
And I should put the arrowroot in
You can go ahead and put the arrowroot in. You'll probably need to whisk it so that it doesn't clump up. And then we'll start to heat it.
Okay.
Our salt. And then you can go ahead and put the egg yolks in too.
Okay. And then we're gonna heat it at.
Yeah, we're going to go over like medium-low heat.
Okay.
And we will need to kind of babysit it because we don't want it to curdle.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and press this guy on. Function. Okay, so we want to go down. Let's try like 800. 6. Yeah, we could. Let's try at 6. We'll see how hot it gets.
Great.
And then the last thing we'll add is our ghee at the very end. And while you stir that, I'm going to do this here. So so the lemon curd, first book, your one that's falling apart.
I love it. Love your
and
lemon curd.
I saw you made homemade cream, clotted cream.
I did.
I was very impressed with that. It's not something I've ever made.
It's not something that we can eat in your cookbooks.
Sure, but that's okay.
You know, so I lived in the UK as a reporter, and I and my wife over the summer said, you know, I just want an English tea. I want, and you have a kind of, I mean, you've got recipes for, you know, versions of scones and things, and lemon curd, so you can do it, and you with coconut cream, but
clotted cream.
I made a clotted cream, and it's basically you take. Amazing cream.
Yes.
Full fat dairy cream. Grass fed. Yep. Sprouts milk. And I cooked it at 180 degrees Fahrenheit. For 8 hours.
Wow. Okay.
That's it, in the oven. And then you take it out, you let it cool, and then you put it in the refrigerator overnight, and the next day you just basically skim off the whey, which you can use for scones. If you do
dairy. Which a lot of people do, and I always say my kids do, and I think if it's high quality and you don't have an allergy, then my goodness, I would enjoy it.
Well, the beauty of what I love about I don't have any food allergies, but I feel so much better when I eat a grain-free diet and a legume-free diet. I really do. I just feel better. I feel more energetic. I sleep better, and so when I'm disciplined about it, which I generally am. It's better. On the weekends, I cheat and I eat, you know, everything. But you know, we're lucky we live in a place here in California, and I should say, right now, anywhere you live,
let's switch to this guy.
Oh, am I scratching your pan?
No, no, it's okay. I just, now that we want to kind of start to move the cooked kind of curd off the bottom. And we don't want it to curdle because it's got egg yolks in it, and we want it to be nice and smooth. So I might actually move to this one and just wipe. Can I use that towel?
Of course.
Do you mind? Yes, so no, I agree, and there's nothing like clotted cream. So it's almost like making yogurt.
It's like making yogurt a little bit.
I've never made it. I'm going to have to
And then you've got this amazing clotted cream. All right, so while we are sort of working on this, and if you trust me, I think I can do this. Okay.
Please do.
I know we had some audio issues, and we're okay with audio now? We're good, okay.
Great.
And I'm sorry about that because the conversation was really great. I mean, I got lost in it. It's like when you're meditating and you get lost in something. It was like, you know. So I want to ask you a couple of things that we were talking about before, which is, you know, all of us are so connected to you through your books, and your food is in our kitchen, and in our kitchens, and cooking is so intimate. Here we are, we're cooking.
Yeah,
It's
right.
such an important, you're connected to your family. I cook for my family and my wife, and we gather around the table. It's just, for me, cooking is the most important thing I do as a dad, right? And here you are, you've written these amazing cookbooks that have helped all of us be better cooks and make better meals for our friends and family, and you've written a memoir.
Yeah.
A really personal memoir, a beautiful memoir, very, you really are open about the things you went through in detail, in a very detailed way. Why did you decide to write it?
I felt very alone when I was first diagnosed, which I talk a lot about in there. I went through kind of a grieving process. And so I feel like, the fact that I've been able to reach this many people, I wanted to be able to share so that they felt less alone. I also really wanted people to see how important it is to advocate for your own health, and how it should be, the number one priority is taking care of your body, and just to try to give people an opportunity to see where they might be able to connect, the dots that they might have been missing. And to also show that it's human to go through the ups and downs. I think from looking at my Facebook or my Instagram, you might think that I've just always had it perfect journey. I've never hit the bumps. I've never had the setbacks. And I wanted to show that it hasn't been a perfect journey, and how much I've learned through those things, and to be able to try to share some of the things that we learned coming out of each of those.
And what's remarkable, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, is that this is not something that you knew or dealt with as a kid, as a teenager. It really came on as a young adult.
Right, 22. Yeah.
Pretty much after you got married.
Yeah, yes. We were 2 months into our wedding. Yes, so you're going to get to read all about that. I felt like we really learned our vows in sickness and health pretty quickly. There's a couple embarrassing stories. That's the last thing a 22-year-old new bride wants to, be talking about with their husband, is a digestive disease. So it really got us in quick and deep, and taught us how to actually grow and learn together, then let it divide us, which I think is essential. How's it coming? We're getting thick? Oh, we're getting there.
It's getting there, yeah.
We're getting there.
Getting there.
That thing turns off when you lift.
Okay, yep.
It's like, I know there's nothing on here.
We're looking for okay.
We're looking for it to coat the back of the spoon, and to kind of leave a slight mark when you run it through there.
Not quite there yet.
Not quite, yeah. And I have 2 already done, by the way. We'll have to get some
Just
spoons.
in case I mess this up.
No, so that you can taste it, because it has to set for about 6 hours.
Okay.
So, so that's really why, it was just really wanting to share every part of my journey so people could read it and hopefully learn from it, and hopefully feel like they had somebody that was there to support them.
What's remarkable, and I think what will be,
we're good.
I think we're good, right?
I think we're good.
Yep.
All right, so you can
Perfect.
actually here, let's stir this in first. So this is our zest. We
Nice.
zested one of those. And I'm using Meyer lemons tonight. You can use regular, but that sweetness from the Meyer lemons, and of course, like that vibrant
ghee.
flavor. Yeah, the ghee is really great. If you can't do any dairy, by the way, just use coconut oil or some sustainable palm shortening. Those will both do the same trick of kind of thickening it and giving it that really nice kind of melty mouth feeling as you eat it. But it'll keep it dairy-free. And same for that crust. So we'd put a little ghee in there. Ghee's lactose and casein-free, so the majority of people who have a dairy intolerance can tolerate that, because it's free of those proteins that cause people some digestive issues. But if you have a dairy allergy, it doesn't work the same way.
The reason why I have so much ghee and sustainable palm shortening and coconut oil in my cupboards is because of
Is it
your
because of
books.
me?
Yes. So
I do use it a lot, but I've always written my books in a way that I hope that you use up all of the ingredients.
Yep,
Because when I
we
first
do.
started eating this way, I remember trying recipes and ending up with half-used bottles of things forever in my fridge or my pantry, and I hated that waste. And so you do use things over and over again. We're good. That's
We're good.
great.
Okay, that's
so
great.
you can just divide them in there if you want.
Okay.
I'm going to pull these ones out.
All right, should I just pour it directly from?
You can if you feel like you can do it accurately. Do you want me to get you
a little funnel?
Yes,
or
I can
something?
get you a funnel.
Okay, great.
Except for it might be in the dishwasher.
Okay,
because
I can
made
do
these
without the
last
funnel. I
night.
think I got it. So
Let's see how you do.
So one of the things that we talked about earlier, but I think it's important to kind of touch on again, is this idea that for the first 5 years of this time period, after you began to have symptoms,
Yeah.
it was like this mystery of just not misdiagnosis, but not the right I don't want to say misdiagnosis to disparage doctors, but one doctor said just take more fiber. They were putting you on steroids, prednisone, all kinds of medication. People were saying, you were wondering if there was a food connection, and the answer you got was
food doesn't help, doesn't cure, and didn't cause it. And while it may not be, and that's what I was really actually able to write more about towards the end of the book after going through the experience that I did in 2019, it may not be, the cure, it may not be the one fix thing, but it is certainly a valuable tool in the healing process. And so the fact that it was just brushed off completely, as I started to learn that that's great. We'll just save the rest, or top them off.
And it's
and
it kind of invalidates your experience because you think, am
Right.
I crazy,
Right.
or am I just losing my mind? Because
Right.
doctors they're not trying to undermine you. They want you to
they want
get
you to be
better.
well.
And the science and the sort of the literature probably supports the idea that there's medication that can help. So how did you come to this realization that maybe it was food, maybe there was a food connection?
Yeah, I started poking around on medical chat boards. And I just started typing in on Google when I was awake, all hours of the night on that prednisone. I started typing in diet and ulcerative colitis, diet and autoimmune disease. And honestly, I think a silver lining of my specific disease, because it originated in the colon, was that I just thought, I'm eating everything. It's all going through there. And I didn't know that it affected all sorts of other ailments and autoimmune diseases at the time, but it just felt like this logical thing to me. And so I just started trying to find stuff about it and, started to hear from stories online of real people that had seen improvements, not cure, because there's no cure for the disease, but that they were able to manage their symptoms and they were able to live, a somewhat normal life. Some went off of medications, some reduced medications, and they didn't have all the side effects, because it's not the medications that are a problem, it's that the medications I was on were causing such debilitating side effects that it just wasn't.
Weight gain, sleep loss,
hair loss,
mood swings. You write about this. You're very open about it. I think you mentioned this to me before we were on camera, but one of the reasons why you decided to be so open about it, because you want people who've gone through this to know that lots of people have experienced this, but they don't talk about it. They're not comfortable talking about it, understandably.
No, which is understandable, and I think too with autoimmune diseases, they call them invisible illnesses because I could actually look like this and be very sick. And so people walk around daily, and unless you're vocal about it or you're honest, nobody will know that you're suffering, and they won't know how to help you. And so I wanted to try to give people the tools and just the freedom to be able to talk about it, and we learned that with sharing about our daughter as well. I had hundreds of thousands of women write in, and some that were in their 60s that had never talked about their lost child 40 years before, 30 years before, and reading my story, they felt like they had the freedom to be able to say their name, to be able to grieve, to be able to talk about them openly. And I think it's similar with autoimmune diseases and, in chronic illness.
Right before we came to the kitchen, we were flipping through your book and the photos, and there's a really beautiful photo of that moment, and it's a tragic photo, but also a powerful photo. And I think you share that photo of that moment when you were began to grieve after the loss of your daughter. I feel like that also is, it's sort of you're signaling to people that it's okay. Like you can grieve.
And it's not only okay, but it's healing. I think so many families, especially with child loss, suffer in silence, and it's very hard to be able to move forward in that when you haven't actually felt or allowed yourself to feel it. And I think it can keep you back so much. And that photo and the photos that we have are all we have left of her. And so, even sharing that photo and encouraging families who are going through something like that to try to have those memories. At that moment, you don't want it, and you feel like this is the last thing I want, and it's weird and awkward, but then when you actually have those, they're like the most cherished photos that we have.
In the book, as you outline your journey from symptoms, diagnosis, or misdiagnosis, and there's a really important plot twist in the book. I don't want to give it away, but I don't know how much you heard about it in the previous conversation, but you found out about this idea of an autoimmune condition. You'd never really,
never even heard the words, no.
Until you were in Uganda.
Right.
And you have to read the book to hear the story, because it's unbelievable. In like a rural hospital in a remote part of Uganda.
Yeah, it took me going all the way out there to hear the words autoimmune disease, which then, when I got back, set me into really researching about why I have this disease and what different, there's like hundreds of different autoimmune diseases. But he also talked to me about the gut microbiome and how, in kind of Western cultures, we're over sanitized and I don't have, a healthy gut microbiome. And I had never heard anything like that before. I mean, obviously going over there, you're encouraged to use hand sanitizer and, not drink the water and to wash everything
We are,
really well.
as visitors, from developed countries, when we go to, they say, oh, you've got to take antibiotics every day. I mean, I was a foreign correspondent. I remember taking antibiotics as a prophylaxis when I went to Afghanistan, and it's so bad for your system.
Right. Yeah.
To just take that every day.
Yes, they can be life-saving and necessary when they're needed, but they're used so much, and then there's nothing that's being done to repopulate what it's just killing.
Just killing all the good bacteria in your system.
Yeah, which I never heard anything, and I had antibiotics. I had before that colonoscopy. None of the doctors here talked to me about repopulating that. So it was interesting, and then later, and I kind of walked through as I started learning more and more about it. But I learned more about it when I went on the SCD diet, and just started to read more and more, and how important it is for our immune health, which can any ailment, any sickness, autoimmune disease. So much of it starts in the gut, and so much of our immune system is actually in the gut. So keeping all of that healthy is like essential.
So this is a book about your personal journey and the struggle that you went through, and the realization that maybe that there is a connection with food, and the realization that actually there is a connection, and how it changed your life. But it's also a business story. You're an accidental entrepreneur because you never intended for this part of your life to become the thing that you're known for now.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've always been an entrepreneur, actually, at heart. I don't remember how many of the stories are in there. It might be a later story, but my siblings and I were always finding a way to make money because my dad made us pay for everything, and everything that we borrowed was in QuickBooks.
Is he watching right
now?
now?
He's watching.
You
Hi,
paid
Dad.
For everything had to pay for.
If we borrowed money, we had to pay it back, and but I mean, there were times we used to get dropped off at the Colorado Springs airport, and my siblings and I would return carts for quarters.
Oh.
I mean, we sold bracelets and pillows. Anyways, all I have to say, I was always looking for ways to make money. But my blog was not one of those.
It was like a digital diary.
Yes, yeah. My husband, Ryan, he's our techie, and he said, you should start a blog. And I think my actual response was, what's a blog? I think this was, in 2008 or so, maybe. Yeah, and he set it up for me, and it was really just a place to catalog some of the recipes that I was starting to create. People would say, this tastes good, and they'd be like, what's the recipe? And so I thought it was just going to be a place to kind of keep my journey and my thoughts and my recipes, and I never intended, I didn't even know you could monetize a blog. I didn't know that you could write cookbooks. I didn't, know that any of that was even a possibility.
How did you, you didn't go to cooking school.
No.
You didn't train as a chef. You even write in the book about how you were a terrible home cook as a younger woman. You served Ryan Rod chicken parmesan.
Raw, yes.
And here we are. I'm so excited to eat this. And I can go on and on about the slow roasted, the slow cooked curry ribs,
the
short ribs, or your pad thai with the carrots, or the salmon with the Thai.
Yes.
Chili.
The Thai red curry sauce.
So good.
Yes. I love that all your favorites are from my very first book.
No,
it makes me really happy.
Yeah, I know they're old. They're the old ones.
The old school.
But Peruvian chicken.
Yes, Meals Made Simple.
Meals it's delicious.
Yes.
Even the sausage with the sweet potatoes. Anyway, as you can tell,
he really cooks from it. I know.
Cook from
You're not just blowing smoke here.
Recipes that have really. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
I have. Some of my favorite cookbooks are, Sami Nosrat and, How to Cook Everything, and Deborah Madison, Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone. And your books are absolutely up there. I use them all the time. So clearly you're not, you were an amateur, but clearly you had a talent and you developed it. How did you learn to do this?
A lot of trial and error. I started with some of the recipes that were in the back of the SCD book, and then a couple of blogs there weren't very many, especially not for this type of cooking, right? I could have gone to culinary school, but I wouldn't have been able to eat anything that they had me make.
Butter, cream,
flour, sugar, all the things.
Yeah.
So I just started researching, and actually what I found more helpful than researching and following other recipes that were already kind of this way was actually looking at the real recipes. I loved looking at Alton Brown. I loved looking at Cook's Not Cooks Illustrated.
Cooks Illustrated. Oh
yes.
yeah, the guy, the Christopher Kimball,
yes.
right?
So the ones that kind of went into the science of it all and like why things worked, because I had tried gluten-free breads, and you'd look at the ingredients and there would be multiple different flours, right? And
rice, potato.
all of those things. And most of what was out there when I first started was just one flour. It was almond flour, right? Or in just honey, and it was very kind of one-dimensional. The flavors, the textures.
Yeah.
And as I started looking at the way that not real, but the original recipes were made, and then even the gluten-free things, I looked and saw there's actually so many different ingredients, and they must all have different properties. And I'll never forget like creating the Real Deal chocolate chip cookies. I looked at Alton Brown. He had like 4 different ones, and he explained what made one crispy, what made one cakey, and I was like, okay, so what I'm missing is the granulated sugar, because that's what makes it crispy, because it melts slower, or the type of fat I'm using is melting too quickly in the oven, and that's probably why they're breaking apart. And so that's when I kind of just started testing things, and poor
just
Ryan.
Reverse engineering.
A little bit.
Things,
a little bit. And Ryan had a lot of things that didn't taste good.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't always easy. It comes to me a lot more naturally now, because I feel like I'm so familiar with things that I kind of know where to start. But there were a lot of meals where I sat them down in front of him and said, I'm so sorry, but we were newlyweds and these ingredients are not cheap. And I'm like, we're eating this, but I promise you I'll make it better tomorrow.
Where do you get your inspiration? I mean, you have, obviously the pad thai is not a pad thai because it's made with shaved carrots.
Right.
You've got dishes that are inspired by Peruvian cuisine and Korean cuisine. We're in California, so we're so lucky to have incredible variety of cuisines from around the world, because the biggest diasporas live in California.
Right.
Is that where will you go out to a Korean restaurant or an Indian restaurant and be like, I love this, I want to figure this out?
Yes. I can't tell you how many photos I have of menus, mostly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things I can't even order, right? So usually it comes from thinking that something sounds or looks amazing, and then I'll kind of, take a picture of the menu or write down what's in it, and then get back in and try to just swap the things that I can't have and try to kind of recreate those flavors. But living in California, growing up here, plus my dad traveled a lot when I was younger for work, and so I had a chance to really get to try a lot of cuisines. And I actually find some, other cuisines like Thai food, and those are actually really a lot easier, I think, to modify.
Yeah.
And things like those carrot noodles came, just from peeling carrots one time for a salad and realizing like, oh, they're, thick and thin, and wide like a rice, those thick, wide rice noodles. And so I'm like, well, let's try this. And and not everything works out, but sometimes it does.
Over the years, as you really began to understand the connection between what you put into your body and how your body reacted, when did you first start to feel the effects of the change in diet? Because a lot of us either have experienced it or know people who experience it, or either have autoimmune issues or some of the food allergy. And I think a lot of us are under the impression that this takes a long time to feel the benefits of a change in diet.
Right. I think it doesn't take that long if you actually do it and do it well, right? Our bodies don't have time to heal if we do, eating well for a day and then we go and eat something else. And so I think 30 days is probably the shortest time that it would take to really see the effects. I have a digestive disease, so mine was almost immediate. I mean, 2 days, 24 to 48 hours, my symptoms decreased by 75%. And when you have a digestive disease, it's pretty easy to see, those symptoms. And I think even things like rheumatoid arthritis, where you're getting joint pain and those types of things, they're pretty easy to see right away. If you get daily chronic migraines and you change your diet for 2 weeks and you don't get a migraine, I think it's pretty easy to correlate those things. So I don't think it takes a really long time. I think it does take a long time for our bodies to heal when they're very inflamed and, you've been very, very sick. But I think it can be somewhat immediate for a lot of people.
When you started the blog, almost 10 years ago, I think, right? Or about 10 years ago.
Almost 12.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think at the beginning it was a slow burn.
It was like, very slow.
You kind of left it for a while.
I did, yes. I had Asher. I was like, the reason why I know is because he's 11. I started it before he was born. Then it kind of went stagnant for a bit, but yeah.
Eventually, you were contacted by a publisher, and that's how Against All Grain came out. I mean, you were not looking for, and when you got this letter from the publisher and they said, hey, we love this blog, you want to write a cookbook, what did you think?
They said, do you want to write a cookbook and will you photograph it? And I just said, I don't think I'm qualified for that. I mean, I did. I said, I don't think I can write a cookbook. I'm not trained. I'm not on the Food Network, And I had to think about it for a bit. I called Ryan. I was kind of like, I don't know what's happening here. I was thinking at that point of putting out an ebook because it was costing a lot of money to develop the recipes. I was putting out 4 to 6 recipes a week on the blog, new every week. Wow. And needing some childcare at that point, So yeah, I was excited, and her story is what got me. The woman I got to write about it in Food Saved Me and why she had found my blog. It had to do with her child, and she had used some recipes to help him feel better and to make him feel normal in his school. And so the fact that she actually had some sort of kind of a connection with what I did and clearly believed in it was what made me decide to do it. And I didn't think I'd ever write another one.
and when that book, I mean, it sold hundreds of thousands of copies, New York Times bestseller. I mean, and you started to get attention, national media attention, the Today Show, and all these. How did you respond? How did you react to it? Was it weird at the beginning?
It was so weird. I think, because I started the blog, well, first of all for myself and my family, but then ultimately to try to help people is what kept me going. That was always my core, and it still is. Yep. It's my mission. It's why I do what I do. I don't write recipes for myself. I mean, thousands of recipes. I don't need to write them for me. It's to try to help other people. So I think that's humbling and kept my kind of core mission in its place. But I will say, when my publisher called me to tell me that Against All Grain made the New York Times bestsellers list, I had to ask him what it was. I knew the New York Times as the newspaper, but I didn't know.
Right. Most of us don't know what it is. Right? Until if we read a book and then your publisher's like, you got to get on that thing.
Yes. So, but really, ultimately, for me, when I looked at it, I mean, obviously, he told me this is huge, but. I saw my name. At that point, there were probably maybe 12 spots. The list changes all the time, So there was a culinary list, I remember. And I think there were 10 spots. And I think 2 of those were held by Ree Drummond, Pioneer Woman. Sure. I think 2 or 3 were held by Ina Garten because it's Ina Garten. Yeah. There might have been one other paleo book on there, and then maybe a couple others. And I just remember seeing it and seeing my name there with these women who I looked up to, but also who cook for the masses. And I was told constantly as I was starting, this is niche
and weird.
Yes, weird.
And it's not.
I just said, wow, there's actually a need for this. Enough people want this book to get it up there with these other incredible women. And so that was kind of the first point to me where I said, there's something to this. People need it. It's not just for me or for my disease. There's a lot of people who want to eat this way for any reason, just wanting to feel better, wanting to have good, nutritious meals for their family, or the autoimmune chronic illness world. And
clearly, I mean, you're tapping into comfort food.
Yes.
The things that I mean, I remember. I mean, even you brought a gift to us a couple months ago, which was homemade marshmallows, graham crackers, and chocolate, all paleo.
Yeah.
All grain-free. No refined sugars, and it was delicious. We made s'mores with those graham crackers and marshmallows.
Yeah, it was an uphill battle at the beginning, Guy. I actually didn't really remember it. It's one of those memories that I think I blocked out at the beginning. I got a lot of flack from the health world for recreating treats. And I fought the entire way back. I said, you can do what you need to do, but for me, this is my life. This is not a 30-day thing. I'm going to have children that I want to be able to build a gingerbread house with, that I want them to know what s'mores are. And I don't want to make them something and sit on the sidelines and watch them enjoy it, and say, well, Mom can't have that. I want to be in it with them. And I didn't want to lose the traditions and the memories that I had. And so that's what got me, started doing this, and that's what got me recreating those things, even though everybody was saying that it wasn't the way to do it. And I said, I don't care, because it's what I need to do to make this sustainable.
Yes. Speaking of delicious
let's do
things,
it.
What I'm...
Okay, so these ones are done.
All right, these are cold.
This is my favorite party trick. So for years, I always have to test it though, because you never know if it's going to explode. For years, I was whipping up coconut milk in my stand mixer, and it was hit or miss. If the can wasn't thick enough, you wouldn't get.
Right.
And so I use this thing now.
It's a CO cartridge.
CO, and you see this at like Starbucks with cream.
And you just put the coconut, so you put the whole can in there.
Yes, so you don't want to do the only the thick cream because it'll just solidify it.
So you have to whip it?
Yeah, you want to whisk it up with the water, the coconut water. I sweeten it with just a little bit of maple syrup. And it will keep in the fridge for, okay, let's see how we could do here. The first one is always a little temperamental. It's not as pretty. That's why I don't like to put it on the, but it gets you this really nice foam. Well, you know what? It may not look amazing, but we're going to do it anyways.
It's looking pretty good.
So yeah, you want to keep it in the fridge for about 24 hours or so. There we go.
That looks great.
Look at that. It just, for Thanksgiving, especially when you want pie.
Have you ever done eggs in there, hot eggs? I know it sounds weird.
No, it doesn't, though. I'm very, very intrigued.
I have a friend. He's an amazing chef. His name is Kyle Conson. He's got a restaurant in Healdsburg.
Okay.
And he worked at a famous restaurant in England called the Fat Duck. And he has a breakfast thing that he serves, which is called Toad in the Hole. It's a British dish, and it's a slice of thick bread, and it's eggs, hot eggs in there.
So, and then it cooks, them because they're hot, and then it's like, so is it more of like a foam
It's like a
texture?
foamy, warm, cooked, and it sounds weird.
Funny story about Toad in the Hole. I had to look it up recently because my mom always called Toad in the Hole just a piece of bread that she would cut like a heart and crack an egg into. But I didn't realize, I think we were watching The Crown and they said something about Toad in the Hole and I was like, that's not the Toad in the Hole that I know. It's a very different dish.
We called it egg in the nest.
Okay, there's lots of different names for it. I have to get spoons. They're over there. Are you able to?
Yes.
I can go in front of the camera. I'll do it. It's just going to be really close up of my head. These are also quite large, but that's okay.
All right.
I had all of our tools out, but the spoons I forgot. So I put some of that mixture on top.
Yum. So these are the ginger snaps.
These are ginger snaps.
That are almond flour based.
They're almond and cassava flour based. So that's why, whatever works for you.
Yep.
You just use whatever. And there's the crust down at the bottom.
And then the coconut. I'm going to deconstruct and eat one bit at
Yes, just one little bite.
Yum.
If there's anything I've learned from doing TV is you can't take too big of a bite. Because then you can't talk afterwards. If you watch like the Food Network, they take the tiniest little bite so that they can say, that's so good.
And if there's anything I've learned from doing food on the radio and podcast for 25 years is you don't want to make too much mouth noise with eating the food because it's gross.
It's so gross. And I learned that reading my Audible book, mouth noises. I had never heard that before. I mean, that's when we had lunch was when I was recording that Audible. Yeah.
Not a lot of water.
A lot of water. And they would tell you that they could hear your stomach gurgling. So I assume this is what you deal with doing your podcast.
Mics are very, very sensitive.
Well, I had no idea. So yeah, the mouth noises, they would tell you that. It's like essentially, a little bit of saliva.
This is so delicious. What's so awesome about this is, and I think a lot of people have probably said this to you, which is that you can literally have a dinner party with people who eat everything and cook things from this book, and nobody's deprived. Like, you don't eat this and say, oh, I really wish this had cane sugar, and I really wish
it had cream. Yeah.
Like, this is an amazing lemon curd pie. I mean, it's so good.
Thank you. Yeah,
and there's nothing that I mean,
that's always been my goal. I think one of my taglines on my old blog used to say something about not feeling deprived. It was eat well and feel great, and then there was something else about, never feeling deprived. And I felt that so much at the beginning, and I felt so alone. And when we did go to people's houses, I would have to bring my own food. And when people would come over, I'd be worried that they'd go to In-N-Out afterwards. And so that's been the driving force in creating my recipes is I don't make 2 meals. For my kids, I don't make 2 meals when people come over. We hosted some friends the other night, all recipes from my celebrations book. And it's just good food, and they may want a piece of bread, but they can get that at home. But I think that it's not lacking in flavor and texture, and that's always the goal. And I don't want people to think it's weird. It's just real food, and it's delicious.
So one of the things I love about this book is that, so you love cooking. A lot of people watching love cooking. That's why we're here. I'm here because I love cooking.
Yeah.
But lots of people, it's not their thing.
Right.
It's intimidating and challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, if you asked me to start doing physics, I would be intimidated. Right? And cooking for a lot of people is like that.
Yeah.
So how do you, part of what I love about this book is it's not only your story, but it's instructional.
Yeah.
It's like, here's actually how you can do it. Here's what you can buy.
Yeah.
Here's how you can start this. What can people do to
get started?
Begin that pivot? I mean, do you think it should be a hard 180 pivot instantly, gradual?
I think it depends what you're going through. I think I wasted a lot of time with the in and out that I did. It was really difficult mentally to commit to it. And I was afraid I was going to lose everything that I loved. And so, but I didn't get well until I did that elimination diet. And then I really saw those improvements. And so I do think that if you're really suffering and nothing that you're doing is working, medications aren't working for you, or they're causing side effects, or the way you're eating right now doesn't seem to be helping, I think diving in and doing a 30-day elimination diet is essential.
Just taking things out.
Taking things out, and I give guides. There's lists in there. There's guides for what to start with, kind of what to cut out, what you can eat, which is really what I like to focus on. It's kind of the mission behind everything I do, is focusing on the positive aspect of it, all the beautiful food. But yeah, and there's grocery shopping lists. There's things, because it's very intimidating. And then I would say starting slow in terms of the recipes. Just keep it simple and basic at first. I mean, even that Peruvian chicken that you talked about, that's Meals Made Simple. That book was written specifically for easy weeknight meals.
And that's a perfect example of it.
Yeah, it's a sheet pan, or like one dish, right? And so I think keeping a few things that are easy for you to do, that you've kind of mastered on your rotation, lots of soups, things like that, until you're healed and you have a little more energy, and you also have seen the effects of it. Because it's a little hard to spend hours and hours in the kitchen if you don't know if it's going to work for you. But if you've gone through the 30 days and you've seen this improvement, then it kind of gives you, it gives you a little bit of a jump start and a little bit of an excitement to get into the kitchen and cook the food that's going to help heal your body.
I think, and you hinted this a little bit in the book, which is, I think that, and I want to preface this by saying I am not a dietitian or a medical scientist. I do have a children's science show, so I need to be really careful about the science. But it's my impression or feeling that as we get older, our tolerance for different foods changes, or intolerance maybe increases. So I find that, for example, when I eat refined flour, if I have a piece of baguette or something, I really feel it now.
Yeah, right.
Whereas 20 years ago, it was different.
Right.
But it really hits me in a different way. And I feel much better when when I go through a week without any refined sugar, for example.
Right.
I really feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting because one of my friends that I did a podcast with recently said, we know when we drink too much that we don't feel well the next day.
Exactly.
It's like the one thing that people know immediately.
You know it.
But everything else, we're very slow to associate it with the food. It's always something else. It's always, I didn't eat well, or I hurt myself running, or something. It's just, or no, I didn't sleep well. Sorry, not I didn't eat well. Food is sometimes the last thing we look at.
Yeah.
And I think actually for mothers, typically that's when they have their first child. It seems to be kind of the first time that they really look at that, especially if they're breastfeeding and things. They're like, oh, what I'm eating is actually maybe affecting my baby. And or when you're pregnant, you want to do everything you can to keep the baby inside of you healthy. And so you start really looking at the things that you're eating. But food is sometimes the last place we look. Yeah. Which is, it should be the first place that we look. And I had a doctor one time tell me that in terms of the young, the young factor, we're a little older and run down, but she explained it as if there's a scrape on your arm and you don't bandage it up, and every time it heals, you just kind of keep scraping it again and taking it off. It never has a chance to fully heal. Right. And so I think maybe over the course of our life, as we're eating those foods, we kind of don't, we don't notice it as much.
I think that's an interesting point, because when my kids, my 9-10-year-old kid falls down and gets a bruise, it's gone the next day.
Right.
When I get a bruise, it's still there 6 months later.
Yeah, forever.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's just that constant over the years of re-scraping that it doesn't allow it to heal.
One of the things that I love about this book is that I think it's the last chapter that Ryan, your husband, has written, and it's for caregivers. Yeah. Right. Because a lot of people who are part of this community know people, or maybe they're in their lives who are suffering or have suffered. And so, I mean, for 5 years plus, he was dealing with doctor's visits, hospital trips, and he talks very openly about, you will get frustrated, you will get angry, you will lose your mind, but here are some things to understand as a caregiver. Yeah. Did you, when you were writing the book, did you have that idea in mind from the beginning, or did you
It actually came later. I always wanted him. The lights, they're right here. I told you. So speaking of my husband, he's an automator. So everything is very automated so that we reserve power. And so the lights don't go on until a certain time at night. Everything is but it's, we came home one time to our poor babysitter like in the dark because she didn't know how to turn on the lights. So no, I did not set out to have him write a chapter. It came from, we finished the book and my editor called me and said, I've had a few people read it. They're all wondering, is Ryan really that perfect? And I said, he is in my eyes. He's my knight in shining armor. He was with me from the minute I got diagnosed. In it's actually been 14 years that he's dealt with my ups and downs of my health, right? I mean, since the minute we got married. Yeah. And so I said, yes, he actually is. He is that supportive. And I want people reading it to see how supportive he is so that if they don't have somebody like that, it makes them want to fight to get somebody like that, whether it's their neighbor, their spouse, their parent, anybody. But I also wanted them to see that he was human. Yeah. He told me years after one of my first flare-ups that he would come home from the hospital from taking care of me. He would take care of our, 9-month-old son, and then he would sit on the stairs and cry at night. And he's a pretty rock solid. I mean, even his chapter, it's like bullet pointed. That's very much how he is. Yeah. And so hearing that made me, as the person who was sick, think, oh, wow, you actually are going through this too. I was so in my depths of it all that I didn't know he was having an emotional struggle with it as well. He's watching his wife almost die, and then he's taking care of a baby. And so I wanted him to also kind of lay it out, how to take care of himself, and encourage the person who is taking care of that person that they also need to take care of themselves. I mean, there's, the saying of you can't drink from an empty cup or pour from an empty cup. And so I wanted him to be able to tell his side too. And let people know that it's normal to feel all those things and to be mad and frustrated, and but that you can also still be supportive for that person. Yeah.
I asked you this earlier, but we had some audio issues, and I thought your answer was so important, and so I want to ask you this question again, which is, what do you want people to walk away from after reading this book?
It's a great question that I feel like I didn't know until I read it all back myself. I want people to find hope ultimately in it. I want them to see that despite their circumstances, whether it's loss or chronic illness, other hardships that we go through, that there can still be really bright, happy points through it. And I said to you back there, if you looked, and actually as I was writing it, I felt like chronologically, I felt like I was just failure after failure with my health. And then as I got to write and sit down and see all the things that I actually learned from those experiences and grew, and that strengthened my understanding of my own body, my marriage, my, relationships, that those points were actually really high, bright, hopeful spots. And so, I think the biggest thing when you get diagnosed with the disease is that you think it's going to rule and run your life. And I think if you fight for it, you can still find those bright spots, and you can still live a really vibrant life despite your circumstances and your diagnosis. And then really just that people won't feel alone, and that they'll feel this renewed sense of fighting for the resilience and fighting to advocate for their health and their bodies. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for having me in your kitchen. Thank you all for having me in your video screens.
So we are going to say goodbye to Guy. He has to get home to his family.
I'm going to eat this
and eat that. And I'm going to answer all of your questions. Guy, by the way, in your gift that I gave you, don't forget that there is the Peruvian spice mix already.
Dinner tonight.
Already
I've got chicken
mixed
thighs
up
in the fridge.
Because I know last time you posted about on Instagram, you were out of spices and you kind of ad-libbed and threw things together. But now you've got a jar plus taco seasoning. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there for you. So thank you for doing this so much. I hope that everybody enjoyed having Guy here.
It was
this
so
is one
fun.
of those amazing accidental friendships that we realized we're 12 miles away from each other ish. And I just love how much you love to cook. And
we're going to cook again.
Yes, we are.
You're going to come. We're going to make some za'atar fries from sweet potato fries.
Yes.
And some herbs of Provence on some chicken thighs, and we'll have dinner.
I had never had za'atar fries until I went to a restaurant in Sonoma, of all places, and I was like, I never thought to put, I love za'atar seasoning, but I never thought to put it on French fries.
The best.
It's amazing. Thank you
all right,
very much. Please say hi to your family.
I will.
Thank you so much for coming out here.